I have decided something.
What have you decided?
I have decided
that
When we're born, we have a mommy and daddy, right? And then when we grow up and get married, we have children of our own. And then our children grow up and get married and have children. And so on and so on. So it's very important and very fun also to...
It's Tuesday and you're horny, and that's why you're listening to Interesting Sex with Miranda. It's a podcast about who, how, where, and why we fuck. Did you listen to the episode that was called Rocky? She's a really, really rad chick, and we talked about her getting drowned. Well, after that episode, I was like, holy mother of dragons, I need to talk to this person that drowns her. So that is what I did, and that is today's episode. We have Mr Kilt You. He is really cool, and we talk about fear and how much he likes to invoke fear in people and how he does that. And it's pretty sexy, but he's also like super sensitive. So I think you'll really enjoy this episode. If you want to peek at his Instagram so you can like look at his stuff while we talk, it is mky.photo.fet, and any of his other links are in the show notes. Please subscribe and rate my show and share it with your friends. And visit us at interestingsexpodcast.com. Or if you have interesting sex and you want to tell me about it, go to interestingsexpodcast@gmail.com, because I like fan mail. You guys are rad. So with no further ado, let's talk to Mr. Kilt You. I won't even say it. Okay, well, that rhymed. Let's open our ears, our hearts, and our holes and give a nice, warm welcome to Mr. Kilt You.
Hello, Miranda.
Hi, Don. How's it going?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm great today. It's a lovely day. I'm excited to talk to you.
Oh, thank you.
So let's just get going right from the get-go. Why don't you, your name is Dawn. Tell people who you are, how you identify as a human, how you identify sexually, and just like a little bit about yourself and why you think I asked you to be on my podcast.
Okay. So as you said, my name's Don. I've been primarily, and kind of what drove this interview is primarily involved in the kink community. I'm here, located here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've been up here over 10 years, but I started in the LA kink community over 20 years ago. I identify as a cisgendered male. Heteroflexible. I mean, it's kind of fluctuated throughout life. I was probably closer to the bi side when I was in my teens, probably closer to the heteroflexible side now in my later in life. And then from a kink identity perspective, I don't know. I identify as a sadistic bastard who cares about people. It's kind of a weird quandary of liking to invoke negative emotion and still love the person at the end.
That's pretty cool and intense. Okay, so one of the reasons I found you is because one of the hottest girls I've ever talked to, Rocky Emerson, was on my podcast, and you drowned her.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of a funny story too, kind of how that all even came about.
Yeah, she said it was like at the holidays and you guys neither had anything to do, so you decided to fly and drown.
Yeah. So,
Merry Christmas to you.
That's kind of even started before then. She had, both of us follow each other on Instagram for quite a while. And both of us, I don't know if you know this about her, she's 6 foot tall. And so, and I am as well. And one of the common plights of tall people is we just don't fit in bathtubs.
Oh.
Bathtubs. And so she had posted a picture about that. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that plight. And I was talking about how one of my dreams is to replace my bathtub with a Japanese soaking tub. And she's like, oh, can I come like take a bath? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And then she's like, and then like for romance, can you just like drown me in shit in the tub? I'm like, of course. That's like my kind of romance. And it just kind of started from there. And that's kind of where this idea evolved with me and her. And then, yeah, so around Christmas time, I'm like, my family doesn't do a lot of Christmas stuff these days. So I had nothing to do around Christmas. So I flew out to Vegas and I'm like, hey, I've got this great room over at the Hard Rock. It's going to have this awesome tub in it. And hey, let's do this drowning scene that we talked about. And so I like got a bath bomb and like these black candles and some Christmas lights to put around the tub and made it all like kind of romantic for her drowning.
She wasn't the first person you've drowned, though, right?
Oh, no.
Okay, so you say that. No. Like, this is an average affair. So if you're drowning and you don't die, is that still just called, or is it still being drowned?
I mean, people drown every day and then get resuscitized. I mean, I'm not drowning somebody to that extent. And so I'm going to the point of fear versus the point of like passed out.
Right. So you haven't accidentally killed anyone in kink before?
No, I have not accidentally killed anybody before.
Have you purposefully killed anyone in kink before?
Or purposefully, for that matter, no.
Okay, no blood on your hands for now.
That's right.
Okay. How did you decide that drowning was something that you wanted to do? Like, why don't we just actually start somewhere else? Let's start with how you got into kink in the first place, and then how did you start moving so drastically toward the sadistic bastard side of it?
I always kind of, I guess, I was a late bloomer sexually. I didn't have my first sexual relationships with somebody until I was 19. And that was actually a kinky my first relationship was kinky. I was submissive to a gay dominant man for about 6 months in that time frame. And so it was just kind of something I started exploring. I don't know that I had a lot of I read like some spanking porn and some like power exchange stuff when I was younger, but there was no big epiphanies in life. I'm always jealous of people who have their stories about they're like, oh yeah, I used to tie up my niece in the closet when we were playing Cowboys and Indians. I wish I always had a kind of a story like that, but I never did because I'm more about interacting with people. It's for me, it's less the activity. So like this whole drowning thing that we're talking about, that's an activity. The act of drowning somebody isn't what does it for me. It's the power, the control, the fear that I might be invoking in that person. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is I've always kind of enjoyed kind of these power struggles with people. And so that's really what I guess drove me into kink and kept me here is that desire.
So you started out, though, more on the opposite side of the power exchange than you are now.
I did. I did.
Did you enjoy being on that side?
I did not.
But you stuck it out for 6 months.
I did. I stuck it out for 6 months in that relationship and had a couple other shorter relationships on that side of the fence. And just found that it just didn't work for me. That's not to say that I don't understand accountability and things like that, but I like being the one in charge. Okay.
When did fear play start coming into it more heavily for you as a point of control?
I would say probably about 10 years ago. I was dating a woman. And that was one of her things. She liked being afraid. And so that kind of helped drive that kind of more away from kind of more the traditional like spanking and impact play that a lot of BDSMers do, and moving more towards fear play.
It's like more of a psychological play.
Yeah. And I found that I enjoyed that more. It was like, not to sound lazy about anything, but it was an easier way to create fear with less like physical activity.
Interesting. I would feel like it'd be the opposite in a way, that you really have to start to understand and like the brain of the other person and what makes them go, and then deal with that. And I feel like that almost sounds harder, though.
Yeah, but I'm doing that all the time. I'm always trying to figure out people. I mean, in my day job, I work in, while I'm not a salesperson, I work in sales. And so I'm always having to figure people out and figure out people's motivations and how to get them to essentially do what I want. And so it's kind of a natural transition for me, and I just kind of do it all the time.
Okay, so you don't really use implements that much anymore, like floggers or.
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while, I had a partner over last night who's really into impact play, and so I mean, I do still use those implements when I need to, or do like to, because I do enjoy doing it. I mean, I do enjoy impact play, but it is a lesser part of my repertoire these days. Okay,
I want to hear the first time that you decided to drown someone. And what made you think that was safe and okay?
I guess from a safety perspective, that's kind of relative. Part of that's just finding people who fit the same risk profile as you. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do is dangerous. So understanding that, as long as somebody understands what it is they're doing and the risks associated with it, it's all good.
Do you have them sign a consent form?
I have never had somebody sign a consent form. I know there are people out there who do that. To me, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because then it's also proof of something that happened that's kind of on the edge as well. So,
right.
I don't know. I mean, also, when I evaluate people for this type of play, I try to size them up, and I try to find people that, I would define in good working order. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but we can both approach this from a knowledgeable perspective. So, but the first time I decided to drown somebody, it was a partner of mine, and we were just laying in a bathtub together. We were both in this bathtub. It was a rare moment that we both could fit in a bathtub together. We used to do some breath control play. I like to put my hand over somebody's mouth and pinch the nose closed and create that kind of fear. And it was almost kind of a natural evolution. We were laying in this bathtub, and I'm like, oh, I could put my hand over her mouth and nose and mouth, or I could just push her under the water. And then it's less effort for me to cause the same amount of fear. And then I found out, well, it causes even more fear, because people have so much more fear wrapped around drowning than even somebody suffocating them. So the act of drowning, or the thought of being drowned, invokes fear before we even get to the activity.
Right.
Because almost everyone's got that fear, that moment as a child, as they're learning to swim, that they maybe almost drown.
Yeah. And you do hear, even with kids, babies, a kid can drown in a foot of water in the bathtub. It doesn't even have to be that much water to kill a toddler. You can turn around and it's dead.
Yeah, not to make it a little grosser, but
make it gross.
Think about college kids and people who die from over drinking. A lot of they're drowning in their own vomit. Is that it doesn't take a whole lot for that to happen.
Yeah. When do you know it's okay to pull them out? And you pull them up and back down, right? It's
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like with Rocky, because this was we've only kind of interacted in that way a couple of times. So it's versus more of an established partner where I kind of know where I can go. With Rocky, I had to be a little more cautious in what I was doing. And so I started very slowly. So I would dunk her head, and so I would do it, and I would dunk her a short amount of time. I would go a little longer each time, and every time I would go longer, what I'm doing is I'm looking for that edge. And so where does the panic finally start to set in? And then once that is established, now I know where I'm pushing. And so like when I did this one with Rocky, to get to that point of panic, that's when we kind of did it as a photo shoot. And if you look at my Instagram, there's some photos of me and Rocky with her in the tub and things like that. And that was where I was kind of gauging, and she looks like she's having a good time. And
tell people your Instagram so they can look at this while you talk about it.
Yeah. So my Instagram is MKY, which stands for my initials, Mr Kilt You, mky.photo.fet. On there, you'll see some photos of her just kind of smiling and having a good time. I think there's even a picture of the faucet running on the tub, and I'm like holding her face underneath it, and she's having a great old time. And so we're just kind of sussing it out and finding where that edge is. And then once we kind of figured that out, and then I put the camera down, because this is kind of where I wanted to really focus in on her, and it's really... Because for me, it's more about the experience. I like taking photos, and you'll see that from my Instagram profile. But at the end of the day, I really love these experiences, and this is why I do it. So put the camera down, and now I dunk her. I've kind of got my timing. Now I know where that panic's starting to set in. And now I'm doing that second gauging of time. And now how far can I push that panic? And so then I dunked her repeatedly, giving her enough time to catch her breath, not really enough to collect herself, and then back in, finding that until she finally kind of broke down and started crying and wrapped herself around me. And that's where I knew that I kind of took it right to that edge of we got to the panic, and from panic into fear. It's kind of like an adrenaline rush. People like jumping out of airplanes because it invokes that fear that something could happen, but it's exciting to them. And that's kind of like what the drowning is too.
When you're doing something that is evoking this much fear, does it give you a hard on? Or is it is it super sexual to you, or it's just like a mind fun, or it's a mix of everything?
First of all, it depends on the person. So, with somebody who I'm sexual with, there is a lot of fear play involved in my sexuality, and yeah, it does. It gives me a hard on, and it's like the quickest way to get me to want to have sex with you is to wrap my hand around your neck, and that's about as much foreplay as I need. But that's not always the case. I do like with Rocky, me and Rocky don't have an established sexual relationship, and I didn't look at Rocky from that perspective, but I do like invoking this fear on people, and so it's still I guess like fun reindeer games. Yeah.
What are other ways that you like to is it evoke fear or invoke fear?
I would guess it would be invoke fear.
Invoke. What are other ways that you like to find?
Yeah, I like to, to me, I like to find those triggers in people. So like drowning is one trigger for people. Other people, it's like, I like doing knife play. So taking the edge of a knife and rubbing it across somebody. And that, especially as you start kind of getting closer to the face, that will start causing people to be fearful, or like run it up the inner thigh, getting closer to the pussy. That will definitely start invoking fear in people. So I'll use any kind of trigger as I discover them. That's what I'll use to do it. So it's not, for me, it's not activity based. Okay.
Do you draw blood when you're doing knife play?
I have. That's usually not a goal. A lot of people that I tend to interact with don't want any kind of, they don't want risk of long-term scars, or being kind of, while I'm not in the porn industry, but kind of have a lot of associated friends within it. I have a lot of people I post that can't have marks either, so sometimes that translates into that too. So,
but then do you get some like wild ones that are like, I want scars, I want you to hurt me and scar me?
Yes, yeah, like the partner that I that came over last night that I played with. Our very first play date, which was, I don't know, probably about 3 months ago, she's like, just beat me and wrecked me. And I'm like, okay. And so by the end of that night, she had a bruise it was so bruised it was bleeding on her thigh. That's still marked today, even though everything's now healed.
Okay. Yeah. How do you find play dates?
To be honest, it's all networking with friends. I mean, there are other places I've met people off of Instagram. I mean, to be honest, that's where I first met Rocky, was on Instagram. Or I meet people on FetLife or OkCupid. I've done the Tinder thing a little bit and then came back because those people sometimes scare me. So yeah,
they're not the emotionally stable ones that you.
Mutual friends.
Yeah. Okay. And then when that girl's like, beat the shit out of me or whatever, she says, is she having fun?
Yes. I mean, I tend to ebb and flow, so it's not all meanness. Sometimes I like to lull them into that false sense of security, and so it's kind of an ebb and a flow. So sometimes I'm being nice, and we're in a high, and then I bring it down, and now I'm being mean, and so I ebb and a flow, and a lot of times it's the after effect that they're looking for in that kind of heavy beating. They want that endorphin high, and that's really what they're after. And so the beating part is the process, and it's the after that it's like, oh, I feel great and feel this chemical reaction in my body. I guess what I'm trying to say is, in the moment, sometimes, like that girl that I'm talking about from last night, she even said it last night to me, is, yeah, in the moment, I don't like what you're doing. But after, it's like, part of me is like, I have this endorphin high. Part of me is like, I'm sad that you stopped. At the end of the day, all of us are having a good time.
So are you just like punching a chick?
Spanking or using a paddle, or I like using pressure points or using people's body mechanics against them, like bending somebody's wrist back is a good way to control somebody. You can move them around because it's a very sensitive way to be grabbed by somebody.
So when you first started hitting women, what made you, it's like this whole thing in your head. Did you go through this when you first started getting into this, when you were like, okay, am I actually going to like beat up a woman?
Right.
And is that okay? Did you go through that? And did you go through things where it's like, I can hit them, but I won't hit them in the face because that is just disrespectful? Or like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, it is an interesting process, and it is a process I did have to go through. Like a lot of men were raised to that hitting women is wrong, and like, I think if my grandparents knew that what I was into, they would be horrified.
Are your grandparents alive?
My paternal grandparents are still alive.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
In their 80s.
Yeah.
So yeah.
They probably don't even know what a podcast is, so you're probably safe.
So yeah, so I did have that kind of, I had to kind of deprogram myself. Part of me always liked spanking and fantasized about spanking women. So kind of that kind of 50s spanking porn kind of was already there. So I kind of already had a base to start off of. And so I was just lucky that I managed to find partners who were into kink. They were encouraging, and so I would push myself a little further, and the way I always looked at it is, at the end of the day, if we're both having fun, how could it be wrong? And so that kind of helped make that transition for me as I moved more into more extreme forces types of play, where, because you mentioned slapping, face slapping is something I do like to do, choking, drowning, those types of things. That's what kind of helped me make it okay in my head, was if everyone is coming at it from a healthy perspective and we're walking away with it still healthy and as good of a human as we came into it as, I think it's okay. Is kind of how I mentally justify it to myself.
Yeah. What do you think your life would be like without kink?
My life without kink. I don't know. It's been so long that I've had friends who've gone back to vanilla dating from dating kink, and I just don't even know how I could even do it. The kink community is so ingrained in my life. I mean, I have a work social circle, but I don't have a vanilla social circle. It's like I have things I do at work, and then I have my kink community, and that's it. So how that would look without kink in my life, I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, because I never thought about asking that before, but just when you're saying about how, as long as it's healthy, but it's just funny because the things that you're talking about, don't sound healthy, right. Because it's extreme. But as I've been talking with people in kink and everything, it is just an exploration, but it's just interesting to think about. For you, this is a healthy, safe life.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I believe it to be healthy and safe, and the people I interact with. That's not to say, like anything in life, that there are not unhealthy, toxic people in it for the wrong reasons, and so there is definitely potential for abuse of power and doing these things with people who are not. I would say in good working order to do them.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think that within the kink community, this is something, and this is something I've noticed over the years, is it becomes slightly different than vanilla dating, even because you're approaching somebody from a totally different perspective. When I do vanilla dating, and what I remember vanilla dating is, I meet somebody and I'm getting to know somebody as a human, and whether I want to date them and whether I like them as a person. In the kink community and in dating, our focus and our first instinct on matching people is with something that's very intimate. And so you start doing intimate things with somebody you haven't even figured out whether you even want to spend a Sunday afternoon with. So it becomes a tricky situation for people within this community to navigate finding those healthy relationships, because you're starting for such a different perspective that you're not used to.
Right. Do you think people get attached to people really quickly?
I think so, because this is an activity where you have to be vulnerable, especially if you want to really experience it. And so you have to open yourself up to people. Unfortunately, some people tend to rush that and not get to know the person first before rushing into the activity that they've dreamt about for the last 15 years masturbating.
Right. Do you masturbate a lot?
Oh yeah. When I don't, right now, I don't have a live-in partner or a partner that I guaranteed to see on a very regular basis. Yeah, my masturbation routine does go up. Right.
Do you masturbate more than once a day?
Oh yes.
How often do you masturbate?
Right now, it's probably 2 to 3 times a day.
Do you work from home?
I do work from home.
That helps.
That does help. That's my nooner. So it's I wake up in the morning. I then it's I'm on my lunch break, and then I'm going to sleep.
Okay. So somebody would be a very lucky partner to be with you if they like to get laid. So one of the things that you notice that you like to do is you like to use a lot of ropes.
Yeah.
And then you also like to cover people's entire faces.
Sure. So the face thing's actually been a recent thing that's been added into my repertoire. From a rope perspective, I've really fallen in love with rope bondage. Even just take away the fear and the sadistic aspect of it. I really, in my personal relationships, I'm very tactile. I like to touch people. And so cuddling is a great activity for me to now put a softer side on me. Now that we've talked about all this fear and everything.
We will get to that, because I am curious about your aftercare after an intense fear scene.
Yeah. So I love to cuddle. And so I'm a very tactile person. And that was one thing I liked about impact play, and one thing I love about rope is it gives me a way to interact with somebody and be tactile without being creepy. It's kind of creepy sitting next to somebody who you barely know, like rubbing your hand up and down their thigh. It can be creepy depending on context. In a kink scene, not so creepy. And so rope allowed me to kind of be able to touch people and feed that need of mine without being creepy. I could like tie somebody up because you had to touch somebody to tie them up, and it's not like this weird, like lecherous, slow, creepy grazing of the skin. I'm just tying people, and I'm in their personal space with them, being able to touch them. And so that's really what rope does it for me. And so that's kind of why I love rope. And so the face thing, I don't know. I'm kind of like, in some ways, I'm like trying to anonymize my models that I'm photographing these days. And so I'm really liking this kind of aspect of covering somebody's face, because now I'm taking the human aspect out of it, and it's really about whatever I've kind of created, whether it's I've just covered their face, or they've covered their face and I've done some rope bondage, more artistic view away from a person and more about what I'm doing.
Okay. But what about do you enjoy degradation play at all?
I do. This is probably, hopefully nobody that I'm dating is actually listening to this podcast. This is one of the things where I struggle with. So it's funny. I had a lot easier time dealing with the wiring of slapping a woman and dealing with that cultural wiring with myself. It's easier for me to deal with that than putting somebody down. So while I do enjoy it, and there's more of that I would like to do, that's something that even today I struggle with being able to do, because there's something around, I'm worried about saying something that's really going to traumatize the person,
right,
or it's just going to kill the mood.
Right. Because it's easier for you to make somebody fear for their own life than it is for you to tell somebody that they're a worthless piece of shit and they don't deserve their own life.
Exactly.
Okay. Even if you understand that they want that and that gets them to a similar place.
I mean, I can get there. It just takes time.
Right.
And it takes a lot of trust on my side too.
Right.
Knowing that when I say something and it doesn't go off as it should, that I don't look like a horrible person to them.
Right. Well, I guess you already, have maybe some issues with self-esteem with other people, because you already mentioned being scared that you're going to come across as a creep. So using rope has allowed you to not be a creep. And in some ways, if you start degrading people in some sort of way, that could make you also seem like a fucking creep. So you probably aren't really comfortable with finding a safe space for yourself to feel like good and not scary. I wonder if that's a similar thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're...
I'm not a psychiatrist over here. I just like to try to figure people out a little.
No. And I think you're right. I think there's a lot of truth behind that some of my holding back is self-esteem based and something I have struggled with. And so I think a lot of times, while I love the degradation and I love to break people down, part of that inner conflict in me is also that empathy aspect of, I just want to love on you and hold you while you're crying and make it all better now. Right.
But what's different? What's the difference between the fear play and what you're saying now?
It's just, I don't know that there is a big difference, but in some ways, what I'm afraid of is that we're going to get to the part I've broken you down, and then I want to get to the part where I help build you back up. But the fear is once I've broken you down, you don't want anything to do with me.
Right. And if it's just the fear stuff, it's more just physical, where the other one is really mental. And those, when people say things, it does hit true and it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're a very nice man. I like you more now. Okay. So, I know it depends on your partner and what people need or whatever, but say you've done some really intense fear play. One of my favorite things so far about kink is aftercare, and even the lulls in between, like the scare and the down, like it kind of makes it all like worth it and fun. Or maybe I'm just a junkie for snuggles and I'll do whatever I need to get a snuggle. But I'm kidding ish. So what kind of aftercare, like if you go through something that intense with somebody, what do you do for them?
So it depends. It depends on what they need. Obviously, as you said, I've had some partners where they're like, I want you to hold me for a little while. I've had, and this is kind of where, it kind of caused me to be a little more cautious about how I do these interactions, because I did have a partner for a while. Was if you went to that kind of place with her, she actually needed separation from me. For that, her aftercare was I couldn't be in the same room together for a period of time, and unfortunately, that doesn't work for me and my
that's
empathy.
Probably terrifying for you.
Yeah, and
maybe
so,
she was fear playing you right back.
Right, exactly. Maybe
you're gonna lose her.
Yeah. But for me, it's really about like before I move into this kind of play, I like to get to know the person as a person and kind of suss those things out. And I like to do what's going to be for them. If it's, hey, we go get ice cream afterwards, or hey, let's go to. We did it on a Friday night. We're going to spend Saturday at a hot springs. Whatever it takes to kind of what makes them feel connected and regrounded to me is what I'm going to do. And then obviously I'm also going to, I need to communicate the kind of affirmation I need back, because you
don't think about the other person that's inflicting.
Right.
It doesn't really seem like they need aftercare. I never thought about that.
Right.
So what do you need? Yeah, because if you're empathetic and you want to make sure the other person is okay, then you need to be consoled and say thank you for giving that to me. I really appreciate you stepping out on a limb and doing that for me. It was really amazing. You're wonderful. Is that what you kind of need?
Yeah.
And snuggles.
Yeah, I tell my partners, hey, I need you to communicate with me. And actually that's one of the things with one of my more recent partners I've had to have this conversation with is, hey, I need to not always ask for things. Because, that's a natural dynamic, is the dominant asks for things, the submissive does things for the dominant. But I need, and that's all well and good, and that shows me that you want to serve me from a dominant submissive perspective. But I need you to do it without me asking, because I need to know that you're doing it not just because I've asked, because you want to be here. You want to do these experiences with me, that you care about me. That's what I need. I need that communication back.
You're like the sweetest little Dom I've ever talked to.
Aww.
So do you consider, because I understand that there's tops as well as doms, and a lot of the fear play and stuff, it sounds like you're topping the experience. Mm-hmm. So, but you also identify as dominant in these experiences as well?
I would say I identify dominant in BDSM experiences. In relationships, I would say I'm more of a daddy. So I tend to be more of a nurturing, loving kind of partner.
Okay.
While
Did
still
you see me smile? I'm like, you're perfect. So what does an ideal relationship look like for you?
An ideal relationship for me looks like, I really want a primary live-in partner who in some ways, I kind of look towards still that kind of traditional-esque of kind of growing old together with a partner. And then I would like to have some other partners in my life, whether they're short-term, long-term, because I like variety. I tend to, even in my day-to-day life, it's like my personal trainer at the gym called me he compared me to the most interesting man Dos Equis commercials. Because it's like I always got like kind of a cool story. Like I was telling him about scuba diving in Egypt. I get bored easily with things, and I don't do routine very well. And so while I really crave and need a primary partner in my life, kind of that bedrock that I can be for them, I need them for me. But I also need that variety in my life to keep things interesting.
So when you have a primary partner,
mm-hmm.
are you able to just feel the emotional connection with them and just have like sex with other people for fun? Or do you start to get attached to your other play partners as well? So I feel like that would be like, I think that's hard for people maybe to understand, or it would be hard for me to understand, say I was your like live-in partner.
Right.
How would I know, like, you know, how do you make that work?
I think part of that comes with a lot of communication and being in tune with your partner and finding ways to make them feel special. In successful relationships that are non-monogamous and trying to balance that, because I do care about my other partners, there may be a different degree of priority that I make with those partners by how they are in my life. I do care about all of them. So because they're friends, they're partners. I mean, I don't do casual sex. Like I have friends who are great with one night stands. Not my kind of thing. I need some kind of emotional, even on a friend level, connection with somebody.
Yeah. Do you have some other favorite fear-based scenes that you've created?
The biggest one that I use to invoke fear, that tends to be, in a lot of ways, I find the lowest barrier of entry, especially with newer people. Breath control, like nose or hand over the mouth and nose, tend to be kind of like, it's an easier way of moving somebody into kind of more of a choking breath control fear kind of play. It seems to be kind of like the what's the word I'm looking for? Like rope bondages to kink.
It's a gateway drug.
Exactly. It's the kind of breath control play is the gateway drug into fear play.
Okay. And just your your mouth over their face is the easiest way to segue into breath control.
Yeah,
do you ever put like pillows over people's faces, or like?
I do, but I also really like looking at somebody in the eyes as I'm doing it and seeing the fear in their eyes. So things like pillows like that obstructing the view just doesn't happen to work very well.
How long have you strangled somebody for?
I would say probably the longest was probably about a minute and a half.
Did they turn like all different colors?
You do start turning a little red and purple. I've had one person in a chokehold actually go out on me multiple times. That was one of her things that she loved. She loved getting choked into the point that she passed out. And
you're comfortable with that?
It was within our risk profile. She was a medical professional.
Okay.
I made sure that I had refresher on my first aid training, CPR, things like that. And so, I mean, it was something that we talked about and approached from an intelligent perspective. But yes, still a risky behavior. And there was still a risk that something could have drastically gone wrong that we both accepted.
How long are they out for before you start to freak out?
I don't let it go so long. So the thing about that is since you're in choking, since you're restricting blood flow, the second that blood flow comes back, the brain starts waking up. So I don't wait, like, as soon as somebody kind of like, I see the eyes roll back and they're out, I stop. And then immediately they wake back up because that blood flow now, because what I don't want is I don't want to cause permanent damage to somebody. And there is some risk. Like the brain does not like having blood flow cut off. To be honest, it's not from a physical health perspective, it's not a healthy thing to do to the body.
Evolutionarily, it is not good.
Exactly. Evolutionary, it's not good. But people enjoy it, including me and the people that I do it with.
You know what? I think I remember in like middle school, people would like do that to like choke holds and stuff and try to faint. Like people would do that to themselves. I remember people doing that.
Right.
Like after school, and you're like, okay.
Right. Because I mean, it's funny.
And like breathing so much, like until like you get like lightheaded and stuff. Like, yeah. I mean, it's interesting if you take sex and kink out of the equation, and you just look at the way people generally like to interact in life, a lot of people like to find where those edges in life are. Where are your limits? Like, how long can I hold my breath till I pass out? I mean, that was a game when I was in school. Yeah. Or underwater, seeing how far you can swim. Can you get to the other side without taking a breath and pushing your own limit?
Yeah. So it's kind of like taking those high school games and just kind of taking it to the next level.
Yeah. Okay, so once they're out, you've never had anyone be out for like 20 seconds.
No.
Then you'd be like, then you'd slap a bitch, like, bitch.
Yeah. Then I'd slap a bitch, and if she didn't wake up, I would be on the phone with 911.
Right. And then do you think you would end up going to prison?
I don't know. It could. It all depends. It would all depend on the district attorney. If I could convince the district attorney that we all came through this as consenting adults, I mean, I would definitely get charged with something, whether it would be involuntary manslaughter or something like that, if somebody happened to die. But whether I got prison time or not, I mean, I think that would be relative.
Yeah.
To who I ran into in the legal system.
But is it something that you think about, or like you don't really think about it because you've done this enough and you know it's okay, that you're not really worried about someone dying? Or is that something that you like is just part of your reality?
I think it's something that's just part of my reality. With established partners, there's not a whole lot of fear because I've done it enough times and I've gauged it and I know where I'm at all times. With a new partner, it is still something that I actively fear. Like, so when I'm
probably just don't
somebody,
take them quite as far. You're not going to take them to pass
quite
out.
As far. Yeah, but in the back of my head, that fear is there. What's going to happen? That isn't there when I'm with an established partner. With an established partner, my mind is completely quiet. There's no fear back there, and I'm just in there. I'm in there to win it. Yeah. But with a newer partner, that fear is in there, and so I kind of it's not as enjoyable in the first few times, but as I kind of move in time, it gets more and more enjoyable.
Right. So what's the sexiest part about fear play for you? Is it just the fact that somebody trusts you enough that they're going to let themselves go there for you? Yeah,
it is. It's all about the power and control for me. It's at the end of the day, it's not about the activity. It's about the power and control and them allowing me to do it and allowing me or even wanting it. I mean, sometimes I do things that they don't want me to do. And when I say don't want, I'm not saying that they're not consenting to, because there is a difference between wanting and consenting. Everything that I do is consented to. They've agreed to it. We've talked about it. We talked about the type of activities that I like to do. They may not like a particular activity, but they'll endure it for me. And so that in itself is sexy to me too, is that they're taking something strictly because I want to give it to them, and they actually would rather I didn't.
Right. I guess that is pretty hot.
Yeah.
Could you tell me about a bucket list item?
Yeah. So one of the things that I have not done that I really want to do is encase somebody in barbed wire.
What?
Yeah. So I want to take and put somebody against a tree and wrap them in the tree in barbed wire as a as a project. I really want to do that, and where the barbed wire does dig into the skin and cause them to bleed, and yeah, I don't have a complete vision of what it's going to look like yet, but it's something that I'm actually has been top of mind for me lately. Is using alternative materials besides rope for bondage purposes, including some of my sadistic ideas in it. And so that's kind of where I came up with barbed wire. And it's actually not a new concept. I've seen other people do barbed wire based bondage, but it is something that I want to do.
That takes a specific partner. Specific.
Yes, it does take a very specific person for that.
Can you just tell me really quick, like, what sadistic, like, really means to you?
What does sadistic mean? Sadistic means painful, whether it's physical or emotional.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what you kind of thrive.
That's what I thrive in. Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that funny to think about of yourself?
It is. It is, and it isn't, because it also, in some ways, oddly, it weirds me out that I'm so lovable too. Like I like to cuddle and like take baths with people, and so it's kind of like I like to do these really mean and fucked up mentally things to people, but then I'm like, let's get some bath bombs from Lush and crawl into the bathtub together.
Yeah, like I love you, sweetie. I just like to fuck with you too.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else you want to share with us?
I mean, I can share some contact info if people want to reach out.
Yeah, so I'll have everything in the show notes, but if you have a couple things you want to just say out loud, go ahead and tell us where to find you.
Sure. So most places, actually besides Instagram, you can find me as my typical stage name. It's Mr Kilt You, MrKiltYou. FetLife, Twitter, Facebook. You can find me multiple places. And then my website, MrKiltYou.com.
Okay. And then on Instagram, you're mky.photo.vet.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I wish you so many more play partners, and I wish you the primary partner that you want to grow old with.
Thank you, Miranda.
It's been really nice to have you. Thank you for sharing everything with us, and I hope to have you back soon, or just keep me in touch, with what's going on with you.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Wowzers. So if Intense is sexy, then he is uber sexy. And I think Intense is sexy. But I don't know if I'd like to have so much fear. Probably, but I don't know because I haven't tried it. Have you tried it? Do you want to try it? Do you want to give the fear? Do you want to take the fear? Who are you? Just something to think about. Food for thought on a Tuesday or whatever day you're listening to this. And if you want to let me know who you are, you can email me at interestingsexpodcast@gmail.com, or feel free to send me a message or go on my Instagram, Interesting Sex Podcast, and give us a follow, because I'd like to know more about you so I can be a better host for you. Let's take a quick second to remember that we're super lucky to live in a place and in a time that we get to have sex with who and how we want, and to send out our prayers and thoughts to those who never have that option. There's nothing I can think of that's worse than child sex trafficking. 10% of any profits that come to Interesting Sex Podcast will go to help stop sex and human trafficking. Thank you guys so much for being here. I can't wait to see you next Tuesday to find out what the pussy drags in. Go get laid, y'all. Why not? And thanks to the band 41 for this super dope music, 41music.net.
Well, it's a doobity-doo. Yes, it's a doobity-doo. Well, it's a doobity-doo. Yes, it's a doobity-doo. I mean a doobie-doobie-doobie-doobie-doobie-doo.